Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I take a look at the last 10 new to me board games that I played and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now, before I get started on these 10 very different games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Two other quick things to mention. I did have a chance to play the Agora expansion to Seven Wonders Duel, and probably controversially, I actually liked this expansion more than the Pantheon expansion, which again, I'm definitely in the minority there. A big fan of Seven Wonders Duel, and I like the way that you can add this expansion content into the game to really mix up the way that it plays, because this adds a new dimension and winning condition where you are competing for control of these different senates. And basically, as long as you are in control of any of these seats and you control those by drafting other cards, then you're going to get an ongoing power. And if you control all of the seats, then you'll instantly win the game. Instant win, much like the military or science pathways. So really enjoyed that one. I also had a chance to play Zoo Vadis, which is the newer version of Quo Vadis. So I did actually replace my original Quo Vadis with Zoo Vadis. And I didn't quite think it qualified for this list because it is so similar to the original. Just new artwork, so you guys are going to know that I like the game already, so probably not worth your time. But that's it really, let's get started on the top 10. So at number 10 I have Quinn. Now Quinn is a strange one, and this is definitely a preliminary rating because I've not had a chance to play this as much as I would have hoped. Now this is an abstract strategy memory style game that borrows things from different games such as Stratego, where you have different units, you're moving them around. Some of them move in different ways, some are fast, some are slow, some push and pull other pieces. And essentially you are trying to put a particular piece on the center spot, but of course you're using diversion tactics, you're capturing other pieces, bluffing, counteracting, all these different things. Now, I love the premise of this game, and the actual production quality is off the charts. Such a polished and sophisticated product here with these magnetic boards. Everything just looks superb. Now, I suppose my main issue with this game is, and again, this is preliminary, is because the front loading is quite heavy. You do really need to know what all these units can do, how to best utilize them, and doing that, having all that information dumped on you at once is quite overwhelming. And I think that was definitely a jarring experience with our first few plays. The game does say, or the rulebook does suggest, that to play maybe your first game or two with exposed pieces in the open rather than playing with that Stratego blind movement. So it takes away the memory part of the game. And I think, in retrospect, I probably should have gone that route first, just so we get more familiar with these pieces. But interesting to say the least, but the jury is definitely still out with Quinn. At number 9, I have Sky Towers. Now this is a small box card game where you are building up these towers trying to get to 21. So all these cards have different numerical values on them. And all you're doing on your turn is you are drawing cards or you're playing cards. There are public objectives that you're trying to race towards, but there are also shifting public objectives where if you are the latest person to achieve a certain objective, then you'll steal that gold card off your opponent. So there's this tug of war going back and forth with these different objective cards, trying to time it just right so that you hold those goals by the time the game ends to get some more points. And the game also has these modules where, should you wish to include them, or you can include as many or as few as you like, and whenever you play specific cards, it will give you a particular power or restriction. So for example, I believe the 10s will say, if you play a 10, you can no longer play any, you can't play any cards below a 10, for example. Like you're building as a foundation, essentially. The same goes for the 1s, you can't build anything on top of a 1. These different kind of things like that. I personally like to add a few in, maybe not too many, so it's overwhelming. And some of them are a bit wackier than others, so I'll probably cherry pick the ones I like. But this one's good. I'm not sure if it's a great filler game. I think the deck is maybe a little bit too big, so it takes a little bit too long to burn through it all. And sometimes you can find yourself not being able to do much because there's this additional rule where your rightmost and leftmost built tower will prevent your neighbours on those sides from playing cards of those particular values. And my recent game, which goes to show that there are issues. I believe one of my opponents played a 3. I had tons of 3s in my hand, and I just kept on drawing 3s, and I couldn't really do anything. So there was that, but it is a silly little throwaway game. It's a filler game. I don't want to take it too seriously, but sometimes it can feel frustrating for that reason. But I do like the way you can interchange, swap in and out these different modules and rules. So that is Sky Towers at number 9. At number 8, I have By the Vote. Now, this is advertised as a real-time, simultaneous bidding style game where you are trying to pay money to win the influence of the different states, and it's going to be a race to the to the White House essentially, trying to get as many votes as you can by the time the game ends. Now, I love blind bidding games in general. I like the idea of do I want to secure myself the win? Do I want to try and get it as cheaply as possible but bid more than my opponent? I like that kind of weighting your bid and knowing how to do it without any wastage. And that comes through quite strongly in this game, I must say. Now, there are other few little rules that I'm not too keen on. For example, there are these swing states where if you win those, then you will take the last one state from another player and take it as your own. And as you can imagine, if somebody buys or pays for a very influential state, and then you play a swing state, you're obviously going to take that most expensive one back off them, which means they pretty much waste all of their money. Now, I do like the way that you can foresee these things coming out, and you can even protect yourself by maybe winning a smaller state so that if you are prey to another swing state, then you can make sure they take that one and not your big state. But it is just something that I'm not entirely comfortable with. It feels a little bit mean and a little bit too swingy. And I also feel like I'm not sure why this was a real-time game at all. I think the game says you can play and put a 15-minute timer on it, but in actuality, that timer doesn't really impact the game at all, because there's too much housekeeping, which obviously affects timings and so on. And I've not read the rulebook myself, but I have heard that the game is broken in terms of if you are winning the most votes and then you just don't play your turn, then you're going to win the game because the timer is just going to run out. So there is that to consider. I will have to look into that rule myself, but the way I was taught it, that was a glaring hole with the rules. But I liked it. I sadly didn't like it as much as I thought I would. My brother did say this one plays better at 2 players, so I will take his word on that. I did only play it at 3, but at this moment I'm thinking there's just better bidding and auction games out there. At number 7, I have Witness. Now, this is a game that I've had on my radar for a long time. I actually had to do a print and play version of this to actually get a copy because it is that rare. Now, this is I believe it's cooperative. I think it's fully cooperative. At least we played it that way, where you are playing with exactly 4 players. And all of those 4 players are going to basically read something from the manual, and then you are going to whisper that information into your neighbour's ear. And then basically the idea is that by the end of, say, 4 rounds or so, you are going to have all the information, and then you're going to have to answer these questions. But of course, the more information that you're trying to retain, and the more mistakes you're going to be making, and so on. So it is that kind of memory retention or information retention as a key mechanism. It definitely feels unique. The puzzles are very different. We only played 3 or 4 of them, but it was interesting to see how differently you can approach this game. In so many different ways you can play it. So again, I like this one. I think I would have to be in the right mood to really get into it. Having to or requiring exactly 4 players isn't exactly the most flexible game, but it certainly does have its own identity, which is a good thing. So that is Witness at number 7. At number 6, I have Quoridor. This is an abstract strategy game that is very light on the rules. So all you're doing is you're trying to get your pawn from one side of the board to the other before your opponent does. Now, you have 2 options, which is to either move your pawn or to place a wall. Wall is essentially impassable terrain, so you're going to have to move around those walls, and you're essentially trying to take the most optimal and efficient route to the finish while trying to put as many obstacles in your opponent's way as possible. Now, caveat on this one that I did play this one at 3 players, which I believe is completely suboptimal. This is a 2-player or 4-player designed game really, but there are 3-player variants out there. Sadly, I think the 3-player variant leaves far too much scope for king making, where one player is going to get ganged up on and then the other 2 are going to basically battle it out. So yeah, I definitely played this under suboptimal conditions, but I loved how pure this one was mechanically. Just those 2 choices make it very clean, and I'd actually be very interested to see how this one works at 4 players as well. So definitely lots left to explore with this one. Is there actually any strategy or tactics with this one? Apparently there is. Apparently there is some depth, but because it is so symmetrical, I'm not sure how that's going to work out, because surely you could just mirror your opponent, but we shall see. That is Quoridor at number 6. At number 5, I have Seasons. Now this is an engine building style game where you're trying to exploit these card synergies as much as possible. It has a good degree of dice drafting, where each round you're going to select these rather nice dice, which will increase your stats, let you collect resources to play more cards, let you actually move up this track to have more options to play cards in front of you, collect victory points, cash in tokens of victory points, and all these good things. Now, I tend to really like these tighter card games where all the cards are designed to synergize with each other. And most recently, I talked about how my favourite game of 2023 was The Veil of Eternity. This one certainly has some similarities to a game like The Veil of Eternity, but I feel this one, despite being relatively smooth, is still a little bit more drawn out than I'd like it to be, probably because I have played Veil of Eternity so recently. But there is a lot to like here. Again, I like the dice drafting. It has a good turn angst to it. I like the way the cards work. Now, my only issue with the game is that you actually draft all the cards, or most of the cards that you're going to use throughout the game, at the start of the game. So you are pretty much setting your own foundation or setting your own destiny right at the start of the game. And I tend to like games that offer you more diversions and tactical decisions as you go, rather than just sticking to a path that you've already laid for yourself. So there is options to draft more cards, but I'd have loved to see more options to draft more cards. But still really good. I can definitely see why people like this one. Okay, some good card play, great synergies, the dice drafting is strong, lots of things you need to juggle, and it feels good to play this one. You get lots of points at all times, so definitely has good kind of dopamine hits. But is it as strong as other contenders, such as the aforementioned Veil of Eternity? I don't think so. So, despite me really liking this one, I think it's just been supplanted by another game for its own sins. So that is Seasons at number 5. At number 4, I have 7 Wonders Architects. Now this is a stripped back version of the classic 7 Wonders or 7 Wonders Duel, but definitely designed more for a gateway audience. And to be honest, I wasn't sure whether this game was going to be a little bit too light for me and not offer enough decisions. And I was very impressed about how it operated. Certainly very smooth, very refined in the way that it operates, where all you're doing is that each player has a deck of cards. On your turn, you can either draft from your own deck, from a communal deck, or from your neighbour's deck. And as you'd expect with 7 Wonders, you are collecting resources, you are collecting military prowess, you are also collecting science symbols, so all these things you'd expect. But all those different aspects have been streamlined. So for example, the war part of the game, if you have the more war tokens, then you are going to take points from or gain more points in relation to how many of your neighbours you are dominating. The science tokens are going to give you ongoing powers. Resources are going to allow you to build these wonders, which will give you points or ongoing benefits as you go. And it's remarkably smooth, and definitely a great way to lure people into the 7 Wonders franchise. And I can certainly see why this one has been a home run with a lot of people. So actually really interested to play some more of this one. And hopefully the expansion material adds enough to add a little bit more filling to the game, but still maintaining that simple drafting system. So yeah, actually very impressed with 7 Wonders Architects. At number 3, I have Cascadero. Now this is the latest Reiner Knizia design, the bigger box games where you are trying to connect things together. In this example, you are trying to build these chains of your Cascaderos to reach new cities and connect cities together. You know, all the stuff you'd expect with this style of game. And this was definitely my most anticipated game so far of 2024. And I'm not going to say it disappointed me, but it was certainly played differently than I was expecting. I definitely did underrate or underestimate how important this track climbing part was. And to be honest, that track climbing part is the focus of the game rather than the actual board state itself. Yes, there is a scarcity and you need to prioritize the right things at the right time. But it's all about getting those combos on these tracks and moving up this track so that you move up this track, which will let you place another thing on the board that will let you connect to this city, and so on. So you can definitely string some powerful actions together here. A lovely aesthetic. I think this one must be my favourite box cover of all time. Definitely my style of artwork. And I did like pretty much everything about it, but at this point, I'm not going to say that I love everything about it. It just feels a little bit more jarring. It doesn't flow quite as smoothly as some of the other route building games like Through the Desert or Babylonia. But that may, or those harder edges might get sanded off with more play. So again, I'm definitely going to play this one with an optimistic mind. And as I know what I'm expecting now with these future plays, I think I might enjoy it that much more because there's some cool things to be discovered here and some cool options you can take. I did also play on the basic board, and I'm not sure if that's the best way to get the most from the game, because there's this, the board is double-sided, and on the other side you have these kind of farmer tokens, which means you can expand out onto them and get kind of instant abilities, which I think could add a lot more, a lot more turn angst and player interaction into the game itself. But mechanically super smooth. Just place your Cascaderos down, reach new cities, get abilities, and go for these public objectives. So I liked it, but will I love it? Will I learn to love it? I'm not sure yet, but I'm definitely going to give it the chance to earn that right. So that is Cascadero at number 3. Okay, so let's get into the top 2 games now, and this is where my chairman's commendations will begin. To be honest, I wasn't sure whether I was going to include number 2 on this list because it is so similar to a game that I already have in my collection. But I thought, you know what, it is different, and it's got a different title. That is Next Station Paris. So if you watch my channel, you might know that I'm a fan of the original Next Station London. I did skip the Next Station Tokyo because I heard that was a little bit convoluted. But this one was a home run for me, and I think I might even like this version more than the original one. If you're not sure what this game is, it's basically a flip and right style game where each turn a symbol is going to get revealed, and then you're going to expand your kind of metro line, reaching these new places, trying to get as much grid coverage as possible. You score multipliers. In this one, you score some additional points based on these different kind of locations you hit. And you also have these cool kind of underpassages and overpassages that you can cross through your railway lines for the first time. So normally, throughout the game, you build 4 different coloured railway tracks, and they can never go past each other, so you are kind of boxing yourself in. In this one, if you line it up just right, you can bypass it by going under those kind of tracks or again over those bridges, which I think is a really cool touch and adds a little bit more flexibility into the game. Lovely and smooth. Again, probably marginally better than the original Next Station London, which I already enjoyed because of those additional features. So that is Next Station Paris, definitely one of my favourite flip and right games. And finally, at number 1, I have Match of the Century. So this one might be unsurprising to some of you more observant viewers of mine, because most recently I did a top 10 games of 2023, and this game did do really well on that list. I believe narrowly missing out on the top 5 of the entire year. That's how much I love this little 2-player game by Paolo Mori that simulates a series of chess games. So it's a card game version of chess, essentially, where you are playing these number cards down. If you play the higher number card than your opponent, then you will gain advantage for that round and pull this tug of war counter in your direction. you're trying to finish the round with that tug of war counter in your direction to win the game. However, the twist is that if you lose a particular play, then you get quite a powerful ability that's on that card that can definitely mess up the game state and let you get special powers and increase your influence going forward in the game. Lovely degree of tension here. You know, that feel of chess really does come through. But what I really love about this game is this kind of mental fortitude mechanism where if you are constantly exhausting yourself, you're going to go down on this track, which means that you're going to have fewer options by having a smaller hand limit, or even starting the round at a disadvantage in terms of, you know, that tug of war mechanism, or even just having less of these pawns that you're taking in just passively, which can boost your influence on each of the regions. So normally if you're getting hammered, this game does have a good catch-up mechanism that will let those more refreshed players come back and fight the good fight and hopefully come back and make up that space. So if you have two players here with equal skill levels, you are going to have a super tense game and it's going to come right down to the wire, and the smallest of mistakes may cost you, just as in a real game of chess. So, you know, very impressive how they managed to pull the theme of chess through here in a completely opposite game that has no chess mechanisms at all. I love the way that managed to shine through. So that is Match of the Century at number 1, and definitely one of the best two-player games I've played in a while. So there we have it, that concludes the video. Hopefully you have enjoyed it. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel and check out my other content too. I should imagine there'll be quite a few of these videos coming up in short succession because I have just been to the UK Games Expo and picked up lots of new games to try, and I'm trying to get those to the table as quickly as I can. So that means more content for you guys. But if you have enjoyed the video, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel and check out my other content too. But for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye-bye.